Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all of our viewers live around the world. This is 60 minutes of unscripted .NET entertainment, and our mission is to empower the .NET developer community to achieve more. And I'm super excited for today's show. I'm your host, David Pine, along with co-hosts Maira, Wenzel, Scott Addie, Cecil, Phillip, and Cam Soper. And this is a little bit of an unusual episode, right? We're not having like a special guest because today it's all hosts. And unfortunately, Luis couldn't be with us today. He's got other things he's working on. So, but welcome to the show. Does anyone want to say hi?
Hi.
Meow.
I would just like to point out, so no Halloween costume for me today. My kids tell me I don't need one because I'm scary enough as is.
Oh gosh, that's awesome. Awesome. Yeah, so today we're going to be sharing some .NET tricks and treats, and there's no related bits section. It's going to be all hallway track, all spooky all the time. So why don't we just jump right into it?
Let's go.
Should we do the like hallway track intro video thingy or no?
I'll call that a yes.
This is going to be fun. I can tell already. All right. So I'm going to start with some tricks and treats here. And what we're looking at is my Visual Studio 2022 preview instance running. And I've got two different .NET 7 projects here. One of them is just a class library, and the other one is an XUnit test project. So inside my .NET 7 class library, I have a public static expressions class. And as you can see here, I've defined several different regular expressions. So regular expressions are great. They're used in other languages outside of the .NET ecosystem, obviously. But what you do is you basically define patterns, and you can use these patterns to match and evaluate other text against it to try to find matches or occurrences, and you can do replacements and things of that nature. And it's a very useful feature. However, at times it can kind of be hard to comprehend, and there's different websites that have been entirely dedicated to making that simpler. So we get syntax highlighting inside the IDE, so you can see like this expression for ABC or DEF. You get like the teal looking pipe. So that's kind of like an OR. And then like the email one here gets really elaborate, right? You get different groups and things like that. And so that's cool, right? That's pretty neat. But what I wanted to really show you was with .NET 7, they've introduced source generators. And what that allows you to do is you can refactor things here with the control period. And it opens up. And well, now it's not going to show me that. Give me a second. I got to do over here. On new, we can say convert this new regular expression that was a static field anyways, convert it using the generated regex attribute. So when I do that, it's going to refactor it. And we can just say my ABC or DEF expression. So what this is actually doing is it's generating, it's using this attribute, and it's taking the pattern that was inlined before, and it's taking the same options that were there before as well, and it's making it private, partial, static. So, I mean, it moved it to like a little helper function here, and it's just assigning it. So we don't actually even need this anymore. So why don't we just copy this, and where that was used before in our tests, we're going to go replace that to point to the function now. And it's
David, real quick.
Yep.
We're getting reports in the chat that the quick actions window is not visible. Could you do some sort of interpretive dance to describe what they should be seeing?
Yes. So yeah, when you do control period, it opens up a refactoring option, and it basically lets you generate, it basically creates this stub for you. So the fly out isn't super exciting. That's not really the really compelling part of it. So the point is we had a static field before. Now we have a static partial method. And you can see there's no method body here since it's partial. But if you hover over this, what you'll see is, oh, you don't get to see the hover either. Oh no. That's
What I'm wondering, David, what if you were
miss.
to share your window instead of or your screen?
If I do that, I've got a 49-inch monitor, and like
Got it.
you won't be able to see anything. It'll be a mess. Anyways, you get basically generated / comments. So here's the best part. If I hold Control and click into it, you can go to the generated code. And the generated code here, this is the / comments that I was talking about. So you see pattern explanation. Match with 2 alternative expressions automatic or atomically, and it shows the different sequences that it will match. And all of this is generated. And since it's generated, it generates an entire basically regex engine implementation that you can step through. You can put breakpoints in here and you can debug it. And it's really, really neat because it helps you with the / comments. It helps you kind of learn regular expressions a little bit better. And in addition to that, you can step through it and you can learn that way as well. Because I think one of the best things to do when learning code is stepping through it and evaluating it and seeing, the different edge cases. So it's really, really compelling that you can do that now. So another little thing I wanted to show, this is not necessarily a super well-known feature, but we can do a search. That doesn't show up either. Okay.
Hey, David.
Yeah.
David, we have a question from.
Yeah.
Where's the darn chat thingy? We have a question from our longtime friend and viewer, Fuel Snable.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if SourceGen works for VB as well?
That's a great question. It does not. It is specific to C#. So C# is where a lot of the future investments have been made. So I can't speak to whether or not there's any plans to do that with VB. But I just know that right now it's C#.
Cool.
But you can see like pattern and options, like those little keywords that are fuchsia in color, and like the regex here. That's not actually in the editor. Those are inline hints. So if you do a search and you type inline hints, there is a feature that's available with Visual Studio 2022 that lets you basically configure all these hints. So if I double click on this, it turns into an actual like parameter argument name, like an argument name. So if I double click on this one, same thing. And it knows it's smart enough not to put those in there. So they're not actually in the source code until you double click on them. They're just hints to let you know what they are. So if you don't need them in your code, you don't have to have them, and it's an option. And so that's regular expressions, that's inline hints, that's source generators, that's all the fun stuff. And I don't know if there's any questions. Otherwise,
I got a question.
Yeah.
And this has nothing related to the show. Do y'all hear that noise in the background? Like, I swear, like there's someone walking around in my house right now.
Oh my God.
I thought you were home alone.
I mean, I'm supposed to be home alone. My son's at school. I mean, no one else lives in his house.
Wow,
Like, do
scary.
you not hear that noise?
No.
It's super loud.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
You serious? You don't hear it? All right, you know what? Forget it. Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. Go ahead, keep going. I'm just
okay.
I'm just a little worried about it.
That's not terrifying on Halloween at all. Pretty sure I'm scared. Yeah. No, I think that's pretty much it for regular expressions and the source generated stuff and inline hints. So who I guess wanted to share next? Who wants to go do some more tips and tricks? And
I can share, David, but let me catching up on my Nightmare Before Christmas over here. Let me close that down first.
Thanks.
All right. So you should see my VS window. Is that visible to everyone? Font size is good?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Awesome. So I wanted to focus in on the Azure SDK for .NET for my little segment in today's show. particularly two areas of the Azure SDK for .NET. The first will be logging. The second will be authentication. And hopefully Cecil is around to see this. And there truly isn't.
I
someone
mean,
in
I
his
hope so
call.
too. I mean, I'm trying to be around for a long time.
So let's run the demo and keep an eye on Cecil while we're doing this. So if I run this application, wanted to just point out what you're going to see by default in the standard output for the application.
Scott, did your
screen's gone.
screens? Yeah.
Are you sure you don't have someone in your house too?
They're stealing screens now.
Gremlins.
I don't
in
know
his
what's going on
computer.
here, but I don't like this. That's all I gotta say about that.
So let me reshare my screen. And add to stream. We good now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I mean,
So trust me,
as
I
good as
did
we
do
were before.
something. Yep. So what you see over here is just the standard output from when I ran the application. But if I toggle over to this particular output window, you're looking at this, and let's assume in this case you're trying to troubleshoot some issue that's happening in your application, specifically with the Azure SDK client libraries. This application, just to show you, is using a couple of different client libraries from the Azure SDK. The first is the Azure Identity Library, which you would use to authenticate to Azure AD using token-based credentials. The second is the Azure Monitor Query Library, which you would use to retrieve logs or metrics from Azure Monitor, log analytics workspace. Now let's assume, okay, we see in the output here, there's this 0 that was printed out. Well, what's going on? Let's take a deeper look at the code. So I'll stop the application.
We lost your screen again.
So
Listen,
that's a
man.
feature. So when
Listen.
I stop debugging, it stops the sharing. Let me
That
reshare.
doesn't seem like a good feature.
It is Halloween. Okay. Share my screen again. All right. So what do we do in a situation like this where we want to see more of what's going on behind the scenes? Well, the very first thing that we can do is we can register what's called a log forwarding service. And this is, again, specific to the Azure SDK. What this forwarding service will do is log messages from the Azure SDK and map those or forward those to the iLogger factory that we have available to us in .NET. So the very first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into my program CS file, and you may still be using startup CS, the older style of doing things. This would work equally well there. Builder.services.try add singleton. So I'm going to register a service as a singleton in the IOC container, and we will call this the Azure the log forwarder. That's the name of the class or the service that we want to register. The next thing I want to do now is go into my Razor Pages page model. I'm just using a page model for simplicity. I want to use a technique called constructor injection here. What I'm going to do is inject this service that I just registered with DI. All right. And I'll just call this the log forwarder. All right. Now, I've injected this into the page model constructor. The next thing I need to do is actually manually start the log forwarding. That is a one-liner where I simply invoke the start method like that. Cool. So what I'm going to do now is I'll run the application, but before I do that, let me show you some of the Azure SDK code that's in here. You can see this is the Azure Monitor Query Library I'm using, the logs query client within there. I am authenticating that client using what's known as the default Azure credential. This is a token-based authentication chain where it will attempt to authenticate first with a set of environment variables, followed by managed identity, followed by a whole chain of dev tools like Visual Studio, VS Code, Azure CLI, Azure PowerShell. The list goes on and on. So with that explanation behind us, let me run the app and I'll show you the difference now in the output when I run this.
So would you say that default Azure credential is kind of like an aggregator? Not an aggregator, but like kind of like a chained pattern type thing. So like you check one, if it doesn't have it, I'll check the other one. You kind of just kind of go down the line. Whichever one works first wins, kind of thing.
That's a great way to explain it. Think of it as like you're setting up a sequence of credential types to attempt. It will continue to walk down that chain of credential types until it authenticates successfully with one of them. As soon as it authenticates successfully, it will stop walking through that chain.
So it's kind of like a wizard hat.
Sort of, yes.
It's basically just all-knowing, all-powerful, and pretty simple.
So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to share my screen instead of the window, because for whatever reason,
It's because the window handle probably changes or something when it goes into debug.
So we'll try this. And what you're seeing here, if I toggle back to the window we were originally looking at, a whole bunch of useful stuff in this output window. Let me just point out a couple of the things of interest here. So remember I was talking about this default Azure credential and how it's a chain of credential types, as Cecil was asking about. Well, if you look for these Azure identity entries in the output, you can see sort of what it's doing. It's going to first invoke the get token method on the default Azure credential class. It will attempt to walk that chain. So environment credential is the very first type it will try to authenticate with, followed by managed identity credential. You get some more useful stuff from Azure Core, which is sort of a fundamental library that all the Azure SDKs take a dependency on. Eventually, you'll see another Azure identity entry. Managed identity credential failed to get a token. So some really useful stuff in here to see what's going on. You will eventually see that one of these credential types succeeded. In this case, it's the Azure CLI credential that succeeded. So we were able to authenticate via that tool. Now, if I change this up a bit, and like you can see here in the output, there are a ton of credential types being used. And it could be that for my particular application, some of these don't make sense. For example, Visual Studio Code credential. Well, maybe I don't use VS Code at all. And for that reason, I don't ever want default Azure credential to attempt that type. What I'm getting at is once you have become comfortable with the Azure Identity Library, there's actually a better way to do this than the default Azure credential, a better way to authenticate. So if I stop debugging, look at that. Didn't lose my screen share.
Nice.
Ooh.
Comment this out. There's actually a more advanced type. Don't be scared away by the term advanced, but chained token credential is what we call this. It's a way for you to create your own sort of custom version of default Azure credential that will only use the credential types that you're interested in using within your application. So in this case, I might say, well, really the only two types that I ever want to use are the Azure CLI credential, and maybe when I get to production, the managed identity credential is what I'd want to use.
So then when you're using these, so not only do you get to specify the ones you want, but I'm guessing also the order in which you want them to run, right? Because it's not like, hey, I'm going to try all of these at the same time. It's there's a first come, first serve type of hierarchy going on.
Exactly. So in this case, because of the way that I've written this code, on line 35, you see the Azure CLI credential. That will be attempted first. If authentication succeeds with that credential type, there's no need to attempt managed identity credential. And you're going to see that here when I run the application. We'll look in the output.
Nice.
Go back to the output. And what we'll see in the output here is it will have attempted to use Azure CLI credential and hopefully succeed.
Did you guys hear that?
I swear you, there's somebody in this house.
Oh my gosh, Cecil.
What
I
was,
think you should
what
turn
was
it
that
off
sound?
and just leave.
You know what happens to me sometimes is that I'll be in the office and then Alexa would just start talking to herself. Does that happen to you?
No.
I mean,
Does your Alexa like,
occasionally.
just start talking to itself, right?
I mean, occasionally. I'm not gonna lie. I do have routines that because if you tell her to shut up, she gets rude sometimes. She makes that little rude noise. So I have like routines where I tell her to shut up, and she's like, "Okay, I'll shut up."
Yeah.
But did you program that?
I mean, they're just routines that I made in the app. Yeah.
I watch too much scary stuff. Like I'm all in on this. I'm like terrified for you, man.
I don't know, man. And
You
so
don't
here's
have
the funny
to
thing too.
don't have to commit this hard to work, like
Dude, here's the thing too. I was talking to my son the other night, and he's like, "Daddy, like I woke up and I saw a person like staring at me in bed." He's like, "That's why I'm afraid to go to sleep in my room." And I'm like, "You serious?"
Oh
He's
my
like,
god.
That's why he doesn't want to go to bed with the light off. So he has night lights and all kinds of stuff in his room. But now I'm starting to hear stuff in the house. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, you might want to sleep with one eye open tonight.
I mean, I might not want to sleep at all, to be honest with you.
It's possible.
Could she have been talking to someone else in the house? You searched your house though. Like you're good, right?
I mean, I think so.
call 911.
Dude, all of our viewers are like, they're like, dude, check your house. Like, oh my god.
It's just weird, dude. I don't know. Anyway, sorry about that. Keep going. Let's go.
I'm worried about your safety, Cecil.
We'll be fine.
Trying to do this and keep an eye on you at the same time.
Okay. We'll be fine.
All right.
I think.
So what happened when I switched from default Azure credential to chain token credential? I've highlighted in the output here that the Azure CLI credential was successful in authenticating. You see that with the message that I've highlighted. It did not attempt to use managed identity credential because there was no need. The token had been obtained. All right. So we've talked about that and how you can use this logging mechanism to see some really useful info for the Azure SDKs. There's one more thing I wanted to cover, and that is I mentioned downstream here, we are using this, we call it the Azure Monitor Query Library. Here's the client within that library that's being used. But wouldn't it be nice if we understood kind of what messages were being sent back and forth to the underlying REST API? Like if we could see the HTTP request and response details. By default, that's disabled, but it's actually really easy to enable. And that's the last thing I want to show you here. How could we enable that to better understand why we're getting this value of 0 back, which by the way is printed down here. It's just the number of rows that are returned. So I'm going to stop debugging. And the way that you would do this, and this applies to all of the Azure SDK clients, there is an options object that you can pass to this client object. So I'm going to just instantiate an options object here. Logs query client options is what I want. And there's a very specific property in here that I want to set, and it's called diagnostics. And if I set that, there's this is logging content enabled property that has to be set to true. It's false by default. And that is why I'm not seeing the request and response details. Now, if I set that to true, good to go there, but there's one more detail here that is very easy to miss that I'm going to show. So over in our app settings JSON file, we need to change the verbosity level for these Azure Core libraries that we're using, Azure Core based libraries. If I go to my app settings file, I'm going to add a new key value pair here, and that'll just be called Azure Core. I'm going to set this to debug. Why am I setting that to debug? Let me pull up a doc And this table here explains why I'm setting the log level to debug for Azure Core. Because remember, we registered that log forwarder service to map from Azure SDK event levels to ASP.NET Core log levels. By setting debug in that JSON file, we are able to capture the verbose messages that the Azure SDK is emitting. So with that behind us, let me go back into here and save. So we added the entry to app settings JSON, and we set this diagnostics property. I'm going to clear the log window, run again. And I'm going to show you the difference here in the output and why this might be useful for troubleshooting. Let this chug along. Is Cecil doing okay over there?
Yeah, so far so good, man. I keep looking over my shoulder, you know, because you never know.
Gotta be honest, I'm feeling a little uneasy.
I know. I keep thinking about it. Like I was thinking to myself, like, what would I do if I just started hearing stuff? I've got headphones on though, so you don't have any headphones. So like, there's
I don't. But so imagine the things that are happening in your house that you're not hearing because you have headphones on.
Now,
don't say that.
now I've got something else to be afraid of because I'm wearing noise canceling headphones.
See,
so like,
see? There you go. I feel like
Same
someone's
here.
downstairs. Like,
That's like the horror movie plot. It's like you go to the.
let's go find out what it is, kids. And everyone disappears.
So I forgot one detail here. I created the options object. I forgot to pass it to the constructor
it.
here.
Pass it.
Clear and run.
and
But that
none of
was
us saw the build output where it said that variable was never used.
Well, I was just going to say that on line 32, what was interesting though, the variable name client options was actually dimmed because the IDE was trying to give you a hint that it wasn't used.
See,
Pay attention to your colors.
I paid no attention to that. This is
You just
PM code, by the way.
You just keep thinking about Cecil and like worrying for him.
All right. Switch back over and show you the difference in the output, and then we will move on to the next trick or treat. So you're seeing the usual output here. Azure SDK stuff being emitted into the output window, but notice one distinct difference here. At the very bottom, we have this debug level entry because of how we've configured app settings.json. This is the actual HTTP response body right here, the content. This is the response coming back from the underlying REST API that the SDK is calling. Sure enough, you can see if we scroll way over, there's probably, the rows collection is empty, and that is why a value of 0 is being printed. So there's nothing wrong with the code per se. It's just, the query needs to be adjusted to actually retrieve a response. Also notice this correlation ID, this GUID, corresponds to this HTTP request further upstream in the window. And so you can see the HTTP request that is being sent. This is just a Custo query in this case.
That is awesome. Cam, I was trying. Luckily I was muted because I just started laughing out loud when I read your comment. Like you can't say that.
Well, I started thinking about it, and it's 4 letters, right? DBUG, the same as info, warn. What else would there be?
I thought I thought it was totally related to something else. I thought we were still on like the project manager code, and you're like, that's short for Azure.
That's what I was thinking too.
That's what I thought you were talking about. Oh my god.
Oh my god, that's funny.
So who's up next? I got to keep an eye on Cecil here.
Oh shit!
Oh my god. What do we do now? Like, I don't know. Does
Cecil?
anybody...
Cecil?
The ghost got him. Oh my gosh.
Does anybody have a number to text him to see if he's okay?
Let me check. It kind of feels bad to continue now. That was like knowing that he might be in danger.
This is someone saying he's going to show up as a zombified human now. There's lots of WTFs. There's one person that's saying it's Halloween. Come on. I don't know. I mean, we're unscripted. This wasn't like no one said, "Hey, I don't know what's happening." This is awkward. It's a prank. People are saying
it could be. I don't know.
I mean, I could start mine, I guess. I'm sure he's fine. I mean, he's probably just disconnected, like lost his internet connection.
Okay. Well,
I mean,
no, it shows he's still on the thing. Wait. It
my
says
gosh.
Cecil's no more. Ah!
there is no Cecil, only Zool.
Oh my gosh.
Oh. Hey, what have you done with Cecil?
Cecil is no more.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I love this show
can't
so much.
continue that.
What is happening?
David's under the desk now. I'm crying here.
Oh god, look at here. We're just gonna start showing all the comments here. Swatted, I knew it.
There is no more Cecil.
Well, so can you do
So
Cecil's
in the
demo?
ale, you're gonna show us tricks or treats?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm with Maira on this. I Cecil's okay. You're just as good. Can you give us a trick or treat?
I have tricks for you.
He's got tricks. No treats, just tricks.
I have a lot of tricks.
Oh. Ah!
This is my friend.
Oh my god.
We're gonna go.
Which planet do you come from? Cecil no more.
I come from downstairs. Do you want to see downstairs?
No.
No. My
I want to show
insides
you
hurt
one of
from laughing.
one of the most amazing things I think that all of us love in .NET is .NET Interactive, because it gives me the power to do anything I want to do.
Oh my gosh, Dean knows about .NET Interactive.
Everything I want to do.
Can it bring back Cecil?
No.
Cecil no more.
So I was talking to Buddy the other day, and we were talking about prototyping this project. And I was like, you know what? I want to try this out in .NET Interactive. Because, I don't want to write classes. I don't want to set up a whole project. I kind of just want to try things out and see what happens. So I thought, why don't we try and fix .NET? And one of the ways I think we could do that, I'm going to write this extension method inside of here, inside of .NET Interactive. And again, I want you to notice that I haven't written any classes, haven't created any project. I just have this file and I'm just going to put stuff in it, right? And now I want to do something like this. I want to say if source is equal to run language, no double equals, no triple equals, .NET, and I want to return and there you go. I have just fixed .NET for everybody. So, all right, I'm going to stop talking in this voice because this voice is really hard to keep going on with. I'm just going to keep talking. No, I'm starting to get a sore throat. All right. So one of the cool things about .NET Interactive is, again, I have the ability to prototype and play around with a lot of things. And so one of the cool things that I could do is I could just write code and try it out inside of these little cells. And I could kind of look at the output. I can explore my code. I can explore data. I can kind of see how things work, which I think is really cool. So what I just did here, I just wrote this extension method. Notice too that I've written this extension method. There's no extensions class, right? Like, we usually do, public static class, yada, yada, yada. I don't have to do all of that. All I have to do is specify my method and I can run it. Hopefully I get a little check mark. And now my thing is running, right? But then now that's up and running, I could do something like this, right? Like I just do .NET. Let's do this. .2 Loa. Oh, look, I have IntelliSense too. How cool is that? Right, and I can do .NET .2. Oops, sorry, fix .NET.
But then it will never match .NET all caps.
I'm sorry, what?
It will never match to lower, will never match the .NET all caps.
Oh, you're right. Oops, oops, oops,
Oops.
oops, oops. There we go. Right, so I have IntelliSense. I got all kinds of cool stuff in here that's going to help me with this thing, right? So I'm just going to kick this off, fix .NET, right? Boom, I run it. And then there you go, right? So, but again, the main thing I want you to see is that I have the ability to run .NET in these different cells. Now, this is a very contrived example. This is kind of like the hello world, here's how things work kind of thing. Like we can do so much more with .NET Interactive. And I actually have another notebook that I want to show you that has a lot more stuff in here. Now, I work at Stripe. So one of the things I like to do is kind of walk .NET developers through using the Stripe SDK. And for folks that know me, I don't write a lot of blog posts because I think, blog posts are evil. I don't think they're evil, I'm lying. But I don't
says the hell demon.
Right. That's the goblin, ghoul, gremlin. Cecil no more. They're evil, but I'm not.
I mean, I think evil is relative, don't you? We could talk about that later. So one of the things that I want to show you here is not only that we can write code, but I can have a mixture of .NET, I can have markup, and also different types of languages inside of .NET Interactive, which is really cool. So here, like what you're seeing here, this is all markup or all markdown, right? So if I wanted to edit this, like I can hit the little edit button and you can see what it looks like, right? And then I can run all the cells that are in here if I hit this run button. Now I'm just going to go ahead and run that because there's a lot of cells in here and I don't think we need to see all of it. But as an example, if I wanted to, for instance, include NuGet packages, how do I do that, right? I want to reference NuGets inside of my interactive notebook where I'm playing around with stuff. Here you go. I can hit this #R directive that's in here, NuGet, and then give it the NuGet I want to use. So here you can see I'm pulling in Stripe, I'm pulling in Bogus. Bogus is one of my favorite libraries. I use it for like generating fake data and things of that nature. It's open source and on GitHub, so if folks have never tried it out before, definitely recommend you do that.
Real quick, Cecil no more. We do have a question. They're saying, what's this notebook called? It's not Jupyter, right?
It's not a Jupyter notebook. It's Jupyter-like. This is just .NET Interactive. And so .NET Interactive has an extension inside of Visual Studio Code. I believe it only works in Visual Studio Code, is my understanding.
I believe so, but I'm not 100%.
I believe so. So if you install this extension, and I think it's also in the .NET bundle. Like there's a .NET bundle. Here you go. The .NET extension pack. It'll add .NET Interactive and a bunch of other stuff. Addie for S# folks and, a bunch of other cool things for just working with it. And then if you wanted to create one by scratch, for instance, you could just, open up the command palette, and then there's an option here that says .NET create new blank notebook, right? And then it'll give you the option of creating like a .db file or a regular Python Jupyter notebook extension. So you can pick either one of those, and then you'll be able to write code similar to what I'm showing you right now. So this is a .dib file or .dib file. That's what I'm showing right now. So again, like I can write like these different types of things. So far you see me write a little bit of Markdown. You see me reference NuGet packages. I'm not going to go through all this because it's not important. But this is where the cool stuff starts to show off, right? Here, all I'm doing, so this is just a list of stuff, right? It's not a list of any particular type of stuff. This is just plain old C# objects. But now there's extension methods that you get when you're working in .NET Interactive and you've installed some of these packages to explore and like display data in a certain type of way, right? So here you can see I'm just like, export to tabular data, and I call this display extension method. And here you can see, I have a list of products, so, different categories, the names, you know what I mean? You could create charts and graphs and different types of visualizations if you wanted to, right? And again, this is all .NET, right? Like there's nothing else happening in there up until this point. There's a little bit of Markdown, but other than that, this is all .NET cool stuff that we're looking at, right? Again, I'm going to scroll down through a lot of this. This is not the important part. But the part that's really interesting that I want you to see, again, this is, you guys kind of get the point. All the way at the bottom, I hope you guys aren't going like getting vertigo or anything. One of the cool things that I can do with this is that I have the ability to mix in Markdown, .NET, JavaScript, and also a little bit of HTML in there, which I think is even better. So if you take a look here, if I run this, what you'll see in a second is that I have like this little HTML snippet, right? And what I'm doing is I'm pulling in the Stripe JavaScript SDK. Now with Stripe, we have these web components that you can add to your website, add a little bit of markup, add a little bit of JavaScript, and now you kind of just have stuff to like collect payments, right? But to do that, that means I have to set up a backend, I have to set up a front end, I got to set up keys and do all these types of things. But what if I could just do that inside of .NET Interactive, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run this particular cell. Hopefully this runs. And then notice, where did this come from? This is like magic.
Oh
right?
my God. Your demo is way better than mine. This is so cool.
So what this is, if you didn't notice before, like this wasn't here before. Before it was just a pay button. But now I have, these are our web components that are showing inside of .NET Interactive. So then that means that I could come in here, I could, do the 42, 42, 42 thing or whatever that number is. We put in for test cards and stuff like that. We can put in these numbers and codes and yada, yada, yada. And I can actually test out, rendering this form here on this page. Now, if I click this button, obviously I don't have webhooks and all this other stuff involved. Like there's things that need to happen for this to work. But my main point here is if you just kind of wanted to see, hey, what is it like for me to pull some JavaScript and some .NET inside of a project and work with it? Like here's a really cool example. And one of the things that makes this possible, so here, this might look like C#, but this is all JavaScript here at the bottom, right? And so one of the things that's happening here, notice on line 1, I have this, pound exclamation point share. Not only can I have these different types of languages in the notebook, I can share variables from each of them, right? So a little bit further up, somewhere up here somewhere, don't remember where it is. There we go, right? So in this little bit of C# that's here, right? I'm saying, hey, give me the client secret, right? And I assign it to this variable. And then down in my JavaScript, please scroll for me. I could say, okay, I want you to go to that C# block somewhere, wherever you came from. And I want you to pull out that client secret value. Now I could use that client secret value. Hey, I'm just, setting up some callbacks and confirm payments and all these types of things. You know what I mean? 90210. Yada, 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 right? I can hit pay, right? And then, all should be good to work. Those who said pay succeeded, right? Pay succeeded comes from down here, right? That's coming back from my callback that I hit, right? But again, what you're seeing is that a bunch of different codes, there's some C# that's getting a client secret, is giving over to the JavaScript, and then the JavaScript is attaching event handlers to this little bit of script that I have on the page. And now I'm rendering this web component technically at a button. And now you could kind of play with everything here inside the .NET Interactive. So,
now I feel like you're just showing off, Cecil. Like I messaged you.
I didn't build this stuff, man. I didn't build it.
I slid into your DMs 45 minminutes before the show. I'm like, hey, you ready? You're like, I have nothing ready to share at all. And then you just come in here and like drop the mic.
I didn't have anything ready. This demo was like 6 months old.
That's awesome. Oh man, that's awesome. That's cool.
So we do have a question. If Cecil No More is willing to take questions.
Can I do the voice again?
You have to.
Okay, I'll do the voice again.
There it is up on the screen. Can you run a cell that runs, for example, a Unicorn server from the Python ecosystem and expose a port and start the server from there?
I don't think you can run background processes like that. Because if that was the case, then we could run any web server. Right? Like we could run ASP.NET Kestrel, we could run that node, simple HTTP. Like we could run anything in the background technically, but I don't think you can do that. I don't remember why, but there are limitations to that. I know there was like some work being done to kind of like figure it out, but I don't know what the status of that is today.
Cecil Lamore, your voice sounds a lot like just Cecil right now. I thought you were gonna do.
He consumed his spirit. Cecil
That
is
voice
speaking
hard
to
work,
us from
man.
the
That voice-
beyond.
I gotta save that voice for later because I got little kids to scare when they come to my house for candy.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
So who do we got left?
Cam and myself, but Cam can go next. I can be last one.
Okay. So I'm going to pop myself up to the top spot so I can use a different view here. But let me share my screen. Where's the present thingy? Share screen. And unlike David, I also have an ultra wide monitor, but I have another just regular 1080p monitor that I keep on my desk just for sharing.
That's smart. I should do that.
So, what was I going to share? I'm not at the right thing to share. Okay, so first of all, let me introduce you all to my basement. So
Wow.
this is my basement. I have a mini arcade in the basement. There's a company called Arcade 1UP that makes replica arcade machines at 3/4 scale, and I've collected a few of them and some other amusement equipment, and set them all up in my basement with nice smart lights and everything. But what we're going to talk about today is what's in this first picture, this air hockey table. Now, this well, I mean, it's a mini arcade because they're mini arcade machines, right?
Right, but yeah, it's like you could charge people, man. I would show up with my quarters and like.
I like
So-
the title of this post.
and it's true. She did let me get a second mortgage to finish that basement.
It is an amazing looking basement.
Thank you. So, of that air hockey machine, I have some complaints about it. So the first thing to complain about it, a complaint about regarding the air hockey machine is the little scorekeeper computer built into it is battery powered, which to me seems dumb. When the air hockey table has to be plugged into the wall anyway, why have a battery powered scorekeeper computer? But beyond that scorekeeper computer, it you can't hear it. It has a tiny little speaker in it, and it has all these cheesy little hockey sound effects, and that's fine. You can't hear it when you're playing because there's a giant blower underneath the table that's running. So I started thinking about, okay, what could I do to build something that is better for scoring air hockey? And I thought, okay, well, we can do stuff with external speakers and we can do stuff with displays. But step one is reverse engineering the stuff that's built into the air hockey table. So I went to the air hockey table manufacturer website. I downloaded a bunch of spare parts, and I didn't download spare. You wouldn't download a car. I downloaded a bunch of. So no, I purchased a bunch of spare parts. I purchased spare sensors for the scoring sensors, and I also purchased a spare scoreboard. This is the scoreboard. Here, where's my pointer? There's my pointer. There we go. Scoreboard. So, this scoreboard, I started looking at it, and I'm like, I don't know if I can reverse engineer this. And David said to me, "Oh, you can reverse engineer this. You got this." So I went ahead and took a look at the chip on this scoreboard. Let's see if I can get focus. No, it's not going to focus.
Wait for it.
Kind of focused. Anyway, you can see there's a chip, and there's writing on the chip, and I identified the writing on the chip, and I said, gee, I wonder if the .NET IoT libraries have a driver for that chip. And I just so happen to know the author of the .NET IoT libraries documentation. It's me. And I went to the available device bindings, and I scrolled down the list until I found down here. That is the writing on the chip, the TM1637 segment display. Hey, thank you for whoever did that.
I did.
Show
You're
my
welcome.
screen again. So we'll go into that, and look, there's a little diagram, and notice that segment display looks not a thing like the scoreboard. So I hypothesized, I'm like, okay, so this little chip requires power and ground and two wires for communication. And I hypothesized, you know what? I bet that whoever made this scoreboard, they just used that chip because it's an easy off-the-shelf component, and they just mapped these different LEDs to segments on one of these displays. One of these, it'd be a 6-digit display with all these different segments. So each character, there's 6 characters, 6 possible characters, and 8 segments per character. So I wrote a little program to step through each possible character and each possible segment on a key press, and I just kept pressing enter, 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 and I would output what character was being displayed and what segment. And doing that, I was able to build a spreadsheet that just mapped each one of these LEDs to a value that the chip would expect to display a segment. And let's look at what that looks like. So this was all hacked together. You could probably come up with a better data structure to store this, but I just built a dictionary, right? So home 1 through 11 and visitor 1 through 11, there is the character position as a byte and the segment display as a 32-bit signed integer. And I did some other little collections where, like, okay, all the LEDs being lit up looks like this. None of the LEDs being lit up looks like this. Just the home side looks like that. Just the visitor side looks like that. And then I wrote a little demo program that steps through. I could call this first section Night Rider, where it just goes across the right. And then the second one, I call it Night Rider, but centered, where it starts at the middle and then goes out and then back on both sides. And then I have this little extension method called reset display. Down in the comments, I have no idea why I need this, but I think the chip is getting in a bad state for some reason. So I have to do that to reset it. But after I do that, then I do the thing where we flash home and visitor side by side, or we flash all of them, and then we just tweak the brightness to make it brighter and darker and brighter and darker. And I deployed it to my Raspberry Pi over here. And because all of these parts for the air hockey table come with these nifty little RJ11 or RJ9 modular plugs, kids, we used to use these for telephones.
Yeah.
I got these screw terminal blocks to wire up to the Raspberry Pi. So all I have to do is plug this into the Raspberry Pi on my test bench over here.
Is he going downstairs too?
No, I'm not going downstairs. I am going to make me the big cheese again here. There we go. And run the code.
You've always been the big cheese. Oh, that's cool. Cool. We all applaud. Applause.
David, I want you to hear me very carefully.
Yeah.
You were right.
I knew I was. I knew it. I had faith in you. That's awesome.
That is awesome.
Anyway, that's my trick. I re-engineered my reverse engineered the scoreboard for my air hockey thingy. And let me share the screen again real quick. If you want to track my progress as I continue reverse engineering this thing, somewhere here, there we go. There's the GitHub repo. It's a work in progress. Sometime over the weeks ahead, I will reverse engineer the entire thing, and then I'll start building a scorekeeping system that hopefully talks and does cool automated thingies. That's it for me.
Yeah.
Can I use that to count the amount of souls I collect?
So far, it's just one. Well, we actually saw Cecil no more. Cecil said he was locked out of his office.
What? He's alive?
Yeah. Look at.
I'll take care of him later.
All right, Maira, you're up.
Okay. All right. So I do have some quick tips, things that for us on the .NET website team have been like really helpful in like last year or so. So one of the things, and I couldn't get AZ Max to properly work. So I'm just going straight to the window where, so we have the domains like on Azure front door. And my first ever incident with the .NET website was when the certificate expired on front door. And so it was a Saturday morning. I had like a presentation to give in 20 minutes, and then the site went down with a certificate expired. And so we just rotated the certificates after we figure out what was the issue. But later on that year, like I think it was last year, they released a new feature to Azure Front Door where you can say latest. So that is my first quick tip. Check if you're using Azure Front Door with your custom, like your own certificate, check to see if you're using secret version latest. Um, and I would even do like recheck, because I don't know, for some reason our dev in staging environments last month also weren't set when I thought they were. So I don't know if that was a bug or something, but just recheck your front door certificates to make sure that it's pointing to latest if you're using your own. So that's my first quick tip. The other one that really like helped to speed reviews on our website was creating kind of a review, and I just masked the URL here. But when we run pull requests on our website repo, we do have a staging environment where we can just quick look at to the changes. So what we're doing here is we use app services, and we're using the deployment slots that we have available from the development environment to create a state like a staging URL. So that it's kind of an honor to like Abel Wang. I don't know if you guys met him, the rock star is like Dia de los Muertos, also like honor the dead. And so he helped us to like conceptualize the idea, and it got ready like later on. But like the conversations that I had with him kind of put this in motion. So let me pull kind of how we do that. And so in one of our steps of the the pipeline, when we run any pull request, it logs into, so it has like all the environment variables. So it logs into Azure. um, it checks if like we have a limit, so we have a limit of 20 slots, and so it checks if that limit has been reached. um, and if not, like it creates a new deployment slot, and then publishes, checks if it has a comment already published, and then deploys all the build and all the code into that environment. And then at the end, it puts the URL at the PR if we had it. So that's the kind of that comment that you see on the screenshot. So that has really sped up like the process for us to review, because sometimes you have quick changes, but sometimes even quick changes you have download the branch and test it locally. But right now it's like if it's something quick and easy, we don't even have. The other one that we recently installed is like we have two pipelines, one that is weekly and one that runs on every PR. But we are a big fan of accessibility insights from Microsoft. And so most of the time we'll do like a quick check with like the extension. So we do like fast pass, make sure that we have, oh, you do have a problem. I'll go check after our screen. But we do have quick checks in terms of getting that extension working. But then we've been adding the accessibility insights action into our pipeline. So we have two ways that we do that. One is we check like the top 15 URLs with the action, and then we do the weekly scan with like the full set of URLs. And so that way we're trying to get and make sure that we're always accessible and trying to catch things early, and making sure that the site is like the best that it can be. And so for that, like, so we have this schedule one, for example. So it's super easy. Like we do an npm install, and then we use the task to check the insights. And they had an upgrade to v3, so that's probably why we're not catching all. And then can talk. And then what happens? So right now we know that we have at least one bug in an accessibility bug, but we run weekly. And then we have like we report red if it finds at least one bug. And so you can come here. We run every like Saturday midnight kind of thing, and then it publishes some artifacts. And so we can come here and download the report. And so in this case, we check, and it's like there's one rule that is currently failing. I know that we just caught another one, so I need to upgrade the insights. But so you can find that extension at accessibility, Microsoft/accessibility insights action. I know they're saying here that it's like they're still in early development. I know that our team is kind of an early adopter of that technology. But we have that mostly on that separate pipeline. So I think it's like it doesn't hurt to have that in terms of having that extra check for accessibility. So I think those are my like quick tips so that we can also finish kind of on time.
Awesome. Anything else from our hosts here?
I love YAML.
Well, you would.
Yeah, that's a demon there for sure. Holy cow.
YAML is
Awesome.
the best friend, man.
Well, thank you everyone for watching on .NET Live. This has been a special Halloween edition, tricks and treats. We're happy you guys are here with us. Check out other great .NET Live TV streams and videos at dot.net/live. And we don't have any upcoming guests, but we would love to have you, believe it or not, on our show as a guest. So if you follow the link here in the bottom, aka.ms/on-net-live-guest, submit a form. If you have an idea, we would love to celebrate you. So come on, check it out, and hopefully you can join us. Thank you.
You don't have to be an expert either. If you're like a beginner and you want to just be like, here's what I've learned about .NET.
Absolutely.
Go for it. We love all levels of experience. We love all types of community members, from the person who's just out there doing their job to the person who goes and does all kinds of conference talks. If you want to be a guest, we would love to have you and feature what you're working on.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you, friends. Bye.
Bye.